Okay, 26A. And about a third of the way down. What happened was the guy who was renting out his house, and somebody finds a lost object in the house. So the finder is able to keep it because they presume it belongs to the renters. Okay. Now, basically, a little bit of a sort of a brief introduction to the next Gemara. The Gemara is going to presume that every person who rents a house sort of cleans it up afterwards. Therefore, it would make sense to presume that the last guy is the one who lost it. So you should know exactly who to give it to. Okay, and the Gemara says, why is this? Lezel basar basar, let's go by the last person. Now, the example the Gemara gives is sort of a similar idea. We talk about money that's found either on the Temple Mount or in Jerusalem. The question is, what is the money for? And the idea is because we'll get to it in a moment, but because the streets of Jerusalem are cleaned every day, so that means that all money found in the streets of Jerusalem are from that day. So similarly, because every renter presumably cleans the house when they hand it over to the next renter, so clearly, if a lost item is found, it should belong to the most recent renter. Okay, so the Gemara says, let's go by the last person. Did we not learn? You find money in front of animal dealers. So we presume that the money is meiser, meaning it is one of the tithes that's taken off. Is meiser sheni. It's taken off in the first, second, fourth, and fifth years of the Shemitah cycle. 26A, but 26A, but halfway down. And that's used to buy animals to bring in sacrifices so you can eat some of the meat, typically a shlomim. Okay, if you find the money by Harabayas on the Temple Mount, chulin. The money is chulin. It has no sanctity, and the reason is because it's on the Temple Mount most of the year, most of the time, the money would not be chulin. The money would not be dedicated to a specific purpose. It'd be regular money. However, it would be Yerushalayim, but in Jerusalem, B'shari during the year, chulin. If you find money in Jerusalem during the year, you can presume the money it's regular money. It's not associated with any tithes. However, b'shas regular kol meiser, you have to presume during the holiday season that the money is meiser, meaning people who live far away, so they would have to give meiser sheni, then they would redeem it onto money. They have to bring that money to Jerusalem to buy a sacrifice. You can imagine there's probably a lot of money. And most of the money in Jerusalem at that point is money that's going to be used for sacrifices. Okay, if Rav Shmaya ben Zira, and Rav Shmaya ben Zira says, well, he doesn't understand something. The same is true of Jerusalem as is with the Temple Mount. Right? You find money in the Temple Mount. Why don't you make the same distinction that during the holiday season, the money is meiser? So he explains, my time, the streets of Jerusalem were swept daily. And therefore, any monies found in Jerusalem are certainly from that day. This is as opposed to the Temple Mount, right? Remember, there is, I believe, restrictions in walking on the Temple Mount with shoes. So you figure that there isn't as much dust or dirt that needs to be cleaned. There's no horse traffic, no animal traffic either, other than the sacrifices. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of traffic, and therefore it did not need to be swept constantly. And because of that, if you find money on the Temple Mount, you don't need to presume that the money was lost there within the past few days. You can presume that the money was lost there even earlier than that. And if the money wasn't lost, most recently during the holiday season, it was lost before the holiday season, then it is not meiser. However, the streets of Jerusalem, because they're cleaned every day, you say the money is most recent. The same should be true with regard to a renter. A renter cleans the house when he finishes, and a new renter does as well. and therefore we should say the money is very recent and it should belong to the most recent renter. So what happened was he made his house like a Airbnb for 3 Jews. So we don't know which of the Jews lost it. We'll have to explain in more detail shortly. So the Gemara says, well, 1 second. If that's the case, then we're finding something with the majority. We're finding an item in an area that's majority Jewish. That is the debate of Rav Shimon Elazar. And we had a question according to Rav Shimon Elazar. In a place where it's majority Jewish, do you have rights? Does the guy declare the lost item ownerless or not? This is what we saw. What was it? Shabbos, probably, right? Shabbos and Sunday. The question was: if you find something in a majority non-Jewish area, Shimon also says you can keep it. What if you find it in a majority Jewish area? We didn't know. It was an open question. So now that we're saying that the guy made a sort of a hotel for three Jews, so it's lost from a Jewish public, albeit only 3 of them are in the public. But Rav Shimon Elazar still would say that even if the item has a siman, you don't need to return it, because the guy gives up gives up hope of getting back his item. We'll explain why in more detail soon. So he says no, it was for 3 non-Jews. So basically the guy's property is a hotel for 3 non-Jews. So the one who finds the item is allowed to keep it, because presumably each hotel person is able to, every time a new person comes to the hotel is cleaned in between. So obviously this doesn't belong to the owner of the property, who's Jewish. It belongs to one of the people that were staying in the hotel. And therefore, because it's because it's non-Jewish, you're allowed to keep the lost item. Rav Nachman says the name of Rabbi Baravua. It could be 3 Jews. But over here is different. Over here they give up. You're thinking to yourself, it's 3 Jews. It's a lost item. Why is the guy giving up so quickly? 26a, about 3/4 down the page.
First word is
Rabba. I'm sorry, line underneath it. My timer. Okay. So you hear the question. The question is: you have 3 Jews. One guy loses something and guaranteed he gives up. Why?
the other 2 took it.
Okay, very good. So let's see. Very good. So Steve's absolutely right. My timer. What's the reason? Because obviously Steve was saying is correct, but it would seem, it's not so intuitive here. It's a lost item. Why would you have to presume the other 2 guys are thieves? The answer is, so first of all, we're talking about money here. So remember, the guy always touches his wallet. If you're carrying money and you lose the money, you know that you lose it very quickly. The guy who loses it gives up very quickly. Why? He thinks to himself as follows. So this is like a shared hotel, right? They all share a room. There's only 3 of us. Elahani.
Maybe they have separate rooms.
What? You'll see why. I know that they have 3 or whatever. They have separate rooms. They don't share. They're not locked. There's only 3 people here. 2 guys with me. Amri Kamayu. I told them that I lost money and they should return it. And nobody gave back to me. Do you think now they're going to change their minds somehow? So he thinks to himself, he says, I told them to give it back to me. They didn't listen to me. Clearly, now nobody's going to give it back to me anymore because one of them is a thief. So therefore, he gives up right away. Because he presumes his companions are stealing it from him. Now, in this case, what actually happened was a third party found it. Right? Somebody who's not related to the story found it. Oh. He doesn't realize that. He thinks that somebody for sure found it because they're all staying together. So one of these guys is a thief, and therefore gives up hope of getting it back.
On the Airbnb together.
Yeah.
And the cleaning lady found it.
Yeah. Jewish cleaning lady. Yeah. The other point here I would make as well is that, 1 second. Yeah. Let's say there were 2 Jews being, travel companions sleeping in the same room. So over here, it's a little different. Why? Because the guy could bring the other Jew to court. There's a principle called a Shavuos Heses. They explain that anytime you have a certain argument, if I demand money from you in court, you have to make a Shavuos Heses. It's a rabbinical oath. It's a type of oath that we will allow people to make today. But Shavuos Heses is only made for a certain argument in the vast majority of cases. Over here, if you have two travel companions, you can't make a certain argument, right? Because you don't know who took it. But if you have one travel companion, you could make a certain argument. So therefore, you don't give up.
So it's like you're forcing them to make a shabua based on a reasonable suspicion. Is that what
So anytime you have a certain argument, you're confident that somebody else owes you money, you can require them to make a short assesses. But as Nachman today, Nachman explains according to his own reasoning, the Amar Nachman, Ross Stella Shenofal Mishnayim, a guy sees a seller, a coin that falls on two people. Chayav l'hachzor, you have to return it. To my time, what's the reason? The guy who loses it does not give up. There's only one, I only have one companion. Onto the shakaltia. One second. Yeah. So he says he's confident that his travel companion is the one who took it, and then he'll make an oath. So therefore, there is no yish. However, b'shloisha with three people, ein chayav l'achzor, you don't have to give it back. My time. In a kitten lahai, amar le'shikaltia, in a kitten lahai, amar le'shikaltia. If I bring either one to court, they'll say it was the other guy, and I don't know who took it. I'm certain that it's one of these two, but I don't know which of the two. So neither one, I can't bring either one to court. So therefore, the guy gives the hope of getting back his item.
So why can't two of them be forced to give up, make an oath?
Because each one can only make an oath about himself, and we don't require an oath only for a certain argument. If I think you might have taken something from me, I can't make you make an oath. If I'm confident, then I could. This that we said that with regard to three people, you're not obligated to return the item. The less my time so Rava here puts a major caveat in the whole thing. So Rava says basically it's talking about where you found a quarter, right? Why? Because a quarter is certainly owned by only one of them. One of them owns the quarter. The other two, one of the other two is effectively a thief. However, if he finds a dollar bill, so then we say maybe all three of them are partners in the dollar bill. So the guy is confident he'll find it. In other words, he's confident the other two guys haven't stolen it because they're partners. And if they have stolen, if they're sort of pushing him off, it's because they're playing a joke. They're playing a game with him. But he doesn't give up. The therefore he doesn't give up. Some say. Rava says, my time even if it's only two, okay. Oh, instead of should mention if there's less than, let's say he finds a quarter. Okay, so if the quarter is a partnership, then there's no shava pruta to each person. Let's pretend that a minimal quantity is 10 cents. So quarter right divided by 3 is going to be 8 and change. So there's no minimum quantity. So you don't have to return it because the chiyuv of hashava saveda is only above 10 cents. If it's less than 10 cents, you don't have to return it. So if it's less than a quarter, then you don't have to return it because you're exempt, even if they're partners. And if there's a dollar, then maybe the partners, each one has a quarter, a little more than a quarter, 33 cents. So then you would have to return it because they're not concerned of each other stealing. Now Rava says even if there's only 2 prutas, is 20 cents, you still would have to return it. Second. Okay, and the reason here is because we say that maybe one of the so now you find 20 cents, you have to return it. Why? Because maybe they're partners. but there is a possibility that one guy will forgive his share to the other two guys because he has only a minimal quantity in it, and therefore you would have a shavapruta to each person. So basically, Rav is saying that halacha is only relevant where you find literally 10 cents, or whatever, anything less than 20 cents. That's the major limitation of this law. Rava says, okay, so a guy sees somebody losing a coin, and before the guy has a chance to look in his pocket, he steals it. It's before Yush. So over Bekulin, he violates several laws. What are the laws? Mishum lo'sigzel, he's a thief. Mishum hashif teshivim, he violates the positive commandment to return a lost object. He's violating here because he's taking it to keep. And furthermore, Mishum lo'suchal le'salam. The suchal le'salam is the prohibition that if you see a lost object, you're not supposed to close your eyes and not pick it up. You should pick it up and return it to its loser, to its the rightful owner. And this is true. Even if he returns the lost item after the guy has given up already, he still has violated these laws. Why? Because he's giving the guy a gift because the guy has given up hope of finding it, and his prohibition remains. Okay, the guy sees somebody losing a coin. So he picks up the coin, and he thinks to himself, you know what, I'll return the coin. Then, life is difficult, and he decides to keep it for himself. But that happened after the guy already noticed that the coin was missing. 1 second. So what happens? He violates only the law of not returning a lost object. He doesn't violate the law of thievery because he stole it after the guy gave up. He doesn't violate the law of not of closing his eyes from why? Because he didn't close his eyes. He picked it up with the intention of returning it. And he's not a thief because he stole it after the guy has given up. The only thing he's violated is the positive commandment to return the lost object. 1 second. Okay, so he sees a guy losing a coin. He waits there until the guy looks in his pocket, recognizes he has a missing coin, and then he scampers along and picks up the coin.
Position, please, Rabbi.
A little more than halfway down the line, a couple lines above the Mishnah. First word on the line is over. So over here he violates the commandment of closing his eyes and refusing to return a lost object. Because in this case, he sort of closed his eyes until he knew the guy was Miyash. So he violates that law. Very interesting. This is a little slightly practical. A guy sees his friend losing money in the sand on the beach. He finds it, and he takes it. He doesn't have to return it. My time, the guy who loses it has given up hope of finding it. Even if the guy finds him with a sifter. I guess this is the modern version before the metal detectors. Right? It's the same thing. If the guy is coming to the beach with a metal detector, same story. One second. Yeah, when the guy comes with this metal detector, he's not even looking for his own lost object. He's saying, just like I lost money, somebody else probably also lost money. So he thinks even if he doesn't find his own money, he'll find somebody else's money. I'll find at least something. It doesn't change the fact that if you lose something by the beach, it's lost forever. Says the Mishnah, if a guy finds a lost object in a chanos, in a shop, you're able to keep it. Okay, again, so let's explain here. We're talking about a guy who, let's say he sells apples, right? So he has his counter, right? He has his what's it called, the cash register, right? And he has his barrels of apples. So now, if there's money that's lost in the store, who lost the money?
Somebody.
A client, probably.
Or it could be the owner.
Probably not the owner, because the owner's money would be lost around the cash register.
Wasn't any property in the guy's, that's his space, right?
Only when he locks the door and he's looking for things. As long as at any point in time when people could be walking in and out, he does not have rights to claim lost objects. It's not the key thing with chotzer is it has to be chotzer mishtamaris, exactly. It has to be washed. So when he locks the door at nighttime and he gets his cleaning crew to clean up, then he can keep all the lost objects. Then the cleaning crew works for him, he gets to keep it, it's his. It's only when it's open to the public, as long as it's open to the public, then there's no you don't have any rights. Okay. Okay. So now, okay. Ben Ateva Ula Chenveni. Chenveni is a money changer. So he has sort of a table set up in front of him, and you find the money, Ben Ateva Ula Chenveni, Shal Chenveni. 1 second. I'm sorry. Chenveni is still the guy. I'm sorry. Chenveni is Ben Ateva Ula Chenveni is the money was found on the counter. So then we presume that he has his cash register on the counter. And the guy finds the money on the counter. So then we presume it was lost to the apple dealer. It was the apple guys, the apple seller's money. Shulchani is a money changer. So he has like a few tables, a table with his money, a table where he changes money. The key thing here is that a lot of the money that's put on the table is not the shulchani's, right? It's in a what do you call it? In the Apple store, right? The money goes one way, basically, right? The money goes from the clients to the seller. In a shulchan, however, the money goes both ways. You transact money with each other.
Right.
So the money that's on the table could just as easily be a client's over the dealers, right? So therefore, you can keep the money. It's only if it is 1 second. It's only when it's between the guy and his it's at his cash register or at his money box between him and the counter where we presume that it fell from his sides, right? So it was the money changing money that was lost, and not a client's. We're together? Okay.
Since coins roll all over the place.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. A guy buys fruits from his friend, or his friend sends him fruit, and he finds money. You're allowed to keep them. And if the money had a simon, meaning either it was tied with a funny shaped knot, or there was a certain quantity of money that wasn't a standard unit, you have to announce it. We'll have to discuss this in more detail. If you have any questions, you're probably going to figuring out the Gemara in a moment. We'll get to it in a moment. There are some significant limitations about this law. So basically, it seems to be two individuals transacting fruit. You find money, you don't know, you can keep it. Not quite. What really happens here is that you're transacting with a business.
If you grab money from my table, even if you think you got it, I'm not going to be happy about it.
It could be saying no, but this point here is that what was I going to say? The point here is that if I send you, you're buying apples from a business and you're looking through the apples in the bucket and you find a $100 bill, you can keep it. If, however, you're buying it in a private sale, you know whose $100 bill is, and you have to return it. Okay. Okay. So Belozer says you have the guy who finds the money in the store. It doesn't just mean if you find the money in the store, even if you find it on the cash register table, you can still keep it. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so the Gemara seems to point to a little bit of a contradiction here. It's not. Okay, so basically we have the shulchan, right? The guy changing money. We find it in front of his table, you can keep it. Meaning that if you found it on the table itself, presumably you can't keep it. It has to be found. The money was dropped on the way to sit down by his table. So you think of the shulchan, the guy at the table. This is where we change money, right? I'll be the money changer. So if you find the money here, right, in front of the table, then that's clearly money. That says in the mission. Between my business table and me, the money's over here. It's mine. If you find the money over there, on the other side of the table, it's clearly yours. And what happens if you find the money? I'm sorry?
Could be another customer dropped it.
Exactly, which is exactly why the finder gets to keep it.
Unless
It's found on the table. So now Rabbi Elazar is saying you could also keep it. If it's found on the table, it's also the finder keeps it. The Gemara asks, what do you mean? The Mishnah says if you find it in front of the table, meaning on that side of the table, then you get to keep it. Presumably that means if you found the table, then it would belong to me, not to the finder. Okay, well, the Gemara says, well, flip the other side. The second half of the Mishnah says that if it's found in front of the table, it belongs to me. Meaning if it's found on this side of the table, it was dropped here, I dropped it. That means that I dropped it if I dropped it here, but if it was on the table, it was lost by somebody else. And therefore the finder would keep it. So the Mishnah is sort of contradictory. So, the Gemara says you're right, it is contradictory. You're right. We'd have no proof in the Mishnah. The Mishnah could be implied both ways. So effectively, there's no proof. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Elazar Haminale, how does Rabbi Elazar know that if you find it on, Rabbi Elazar's opinion is if you find it on the table, you get to keep it. So Amarava Masisin Kashisin. He found the Mishnah difficult. My ear, the Tani Ben Kis Shulchan, Shulchan, listening al Shulchan. Inami Motza Bishulchanos. Tani Resha. Motza Bechanos. Shaloi. Okay, the fact that the Mishnah chooses terminology of talking about in front of the table, describing what belongs to Chen he has in front of his table, and it describes everything else as lefnei, because lefnei is a very vague word. Lefnei means in front of. Well, in front of him, meaning in front of me, like over here or in front of my table. We're not sure what it means. So, but Ben Akis L'Shulchan is very specific. It means between my table and me. This area over here. This area is mine. So why does the Mishnah prefer to give a vague definition in the first context? Because anything that's not in front of here belongs to the finder, including what's on the table. Because the Mishnah chose deliberately vague terminology when describing what belongs to the finder, and when it chose to describe what belongs to the shulchani, the money changer, it gave very, very specific description. It's in front of the table. It's between the table and me. Yeah?
No, just understood.
Okay. 1 second. If it's found on the money changer's table, because the money goes both ways, right? It could be that this money was given to a client who forgot it there, or it could be the client forgot it when it was given to me. So therefore, it's Harei L'Shalai belongs to the finder.
Also could be the money changer.
True. But the probability seems to be here that it really belongs to everybody. That's why, according to Rabbi Shimon, you'd be able to keep it. Amar Shlokish. Okay, I'll get Paris with Chaveris. You said the guy. I sold you. Somebody sold somebody else a bucket full of apples, and he finds 100 inside. For Franklin. Amar Shlokish. I'm sure Rabbi Yani. Lo shano ela b'lei kachman atagar. This is only true if you bought it from a merchant. A tagar is more like a broker, so he's constantly switching out things, right? So he buys from one, he resells it. He's a broker. But if he buys it from a private seller, you have to give it back because you know who it belongs to. It belongs clearly to the guy who sold it to you. If you bought it from a broker, the broker doesn't know that he has it. Again, there's no kinyan chotzer if you don't know you have it. Right? So the guy, he has a bag of apples with a Franklin and he doesn't realize it. It's not his. And he's a broker, so it's not necessarily his. It could be the guy before him lost it.
It could be his. It
could be.
Not realize that's where it is.
It could be. But the point is, he's a broker, so we don't know that we're not confident it's his. If you're the farmer, and you have 100 buckets of apples, and there's a Franklin in the buckets, it's clearly yours. But if you have a broker who has 100 buckets, well, might have been his, but maybe not. Probably not actually, because he's a broker. He's buying and he's selling. He's a trader. He's moving things around. Okay, Tana Kamma Nachman. This the Tana said this in front of Nachman as well. You bought it from a private owner, you have to give it back. Okay, so now we have to change the scenario because, like always, I gave you a bad parable. So here's a better parable. Okay, the guy had wheat kernels. Now, wheat kernels obviously were threshed, and threshing seems to be done in a public area. So now, if there's wheat kernels there, so at this point, it's not necessarily from the owners because it's gone through processes that are not associated with the owner. Could be it was lost in the threshing floor by somebody else. Does the owner actually thresh it? He doesn't. It's the Gemara's question. Was the owner himself the one to put the kernels in the buckets? No, he wasn't. He wasn't the one to put the kernels in the buckets. Somebody did it for him. And it was done in a public area. So that's the case. You do have confidence that it's probably not the original owners. It's a possibility, but keep in mind here, the coin would have been threshed too, right? And it could end up with other people's stuff. If the coin was there and the original owner who gave bushels of wheat. So Amalei says the author said, okay, Ismay, should I delete this brisa? So Amalei loy to target my season shadoshna the avdev shifchosek nanim. He said, don't delete it. Just understand that what you're saying is going to be dependent on who threshed it. If the owner, the farmer that grew it threshed it himself or had his slaves do it, then the brisa is correct. If there's a Franklin inside, then it belongs to the original owner, the farmer. However, if the farmer took his stuff to a threshing depot to get it threshed, then it would belong to the finder, not to the farmer.
Does that
Yes.
reach certain threshold first?
I was thinking the same thing. Good
Very
job,
good.
set threshold.
Very good.
Well, when you say it's certified 100% fresh.
Okay. We have a cryptic Mishnah here. Okay, the Mishnah talks about a number of items that are lost. We talk about a shor, a chamor, a set, and a simla, or salmo. A donkey, an ox, a sheep, and an item of clothing that were lost. What's the importance of telling you about an item of clothing? It was in the general category. Why was it mentioned specifically? A key component of what's necessary to require an announcement, to require you to return a lost item, is that it have a siman, clothing. Again, we live in the modern day and age where everything is sewed by machines and everything is exactly identical. But it wasn't always the case. Before the modern day and age, things were sewed by a tailor. Every item of clothing was custom made. And therefore, every item of clothing necessarily has a siman. It has identifying features. And not only that, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think they found a shirt tree yet. There's no trees that grow shirts, which means that the shirt clearly has an owner. Somebody purchased it. Somebody made it. Those items must be returned. If, however, on the other hand, you walk down the street and you find what do we grow in Portland? Do we have any fruit trees in Portland? Cherry trees. You find cherries on the floor, apples, figs, cannabis plants. So the cannabis are not wild though. They for sure have an owner. So if you find something where you're not sure if there's an owner because it could very well be wild, so then you're allowed to keep it. Okay, my b'chlal kollel. What does it mean? It was in a klal. It was in a general rule. So Rava says b'chlal kol avedas achicha. There's a general rule of all lost objects. All lost objects include everything. They include things like a shirt as well. And therefore, the Torah recognized simla as an individual unit of the klal. Right? We had a general statement. Any lost item includes everything. And then the Torah identifies the specific, a lost piece of clothing. What does that tell you? It tells you that the lost piece of clothing has its own set of laws that it teaches the general principle, right? Davar shahaya b'chlal v'yotza min ha'klal or the lamed al atzma yotza, lamed al kol ha'klal yotza. It's one of the laws of Rabbi Shmuel. Maybe you'll hear Yossi Deishim saying it in a few minutes. This is one of the 13 hermeneutic principles of how the Torah is learnt. Okay. Probably better to stop here. I would continue if we had a few minutes, but it's complicated. We'll continue tomorrow.